Perfect.
All right. And recording. So we are absolutely live right now. All right. So welcome everybody who signed up for the Decatur Bourbon Talk podcast with Jeff Engel and myself, Perry Lewin. This is our inaugural podcast here, episode 1. You know, Jeff, if we make this thing and it gets going popular and we start doing these week after week or month after month, we're going to come back and look at this first one and we're like, oh my God, what were we doing? We were so bad.
That's all right. Well, happy Friday, and thanks for joining us, guys. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely. So the list came from the couple posts that I put on Facebook a while back. And then when you had that awesome Heaven Hill bourbon tasting and discussion at the Decatur Club in, I think that was in July or June.
Yeah, Heaven Hill was fantastic.
Yeah. And had 70 people there. That's when we started getting a lot of the people to sign up for the Decatur Bourbon Talk podcast. And so I sent them a quick reminder today that we're going to be doing this. So I hope that this list just continues growing and that people are able to actually comment and make some good suggestions on what we could do in the future. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's going to be a fantastic adventure, and I'm glad that we've already got a good group of friends that are following the tour, and I look forward to having some of them on. You know, I think in the future, as we engage in these discussions, it'll be fun to take different vantage points from some of my peer restaurateurs, maybe some of our fellow bourbon buddies who have been studying this for a while, and I think it's going to be a very fun adventure.
I do too, and I'm looking forward to getting some guest appearances on here. I think Rodney Powell, I think if he agrees to it, would be great from Robbie's Bar and Grill. He's
Absolutely.
been a long time bourbon enthusiast. I got the gentleman from the liquor store, Famous Liquors in the Mount Zion region. It's not really Mount Zion, it's Decatur, but we call that Mount Zion area.
Yes,
right there by, Johnson, I think his name's. Anyways, he is a very well-known bourbon enthusiast here in town. Get a couple of our followers on here that love bourbon, and just get it from a maybe just a consumer standpoint,
Sure.
why they like bourbon and all of that, and then maybe one or two of your representatives, your distributor representatives. The gentleman that you had the other night with the Penelope.
He's fantastic with Penelope. He represents Penelope, RD1, Four Roses, Ben Holiday. He's got a fresh look at some of these designer smaller houses that are producing some great distilled spirits. And then I've got some folks that are direct to the Sazerac rep, so we can invite somebody in, talk about Buffalo Trace, C.H. Taylor, Eagle Rare, see what's really driving their thought process as they continue to dominate the market. So, it'd be fun, man, if we could get to a point where we could take a group of folks down to Louisville and do a barrel pick at Pursuit United. There's some great guys down there with Kenny and the guys, and you got to meet the gentleman a couple months back with Pursuit United. They've got some great spirits that are only available through Benny's in Illinois currently, but if you go down and visit the distillery, you can grab a select single barrel, you can grab toasted rye. They've got some really, really cool products. Plus, when you go there, rather than joining a tasting room where you sit and have 5 or 6 samples pre-poured for you, they literally roll out the barrels for you and roll out 7 barrels. They whiskey thief out of each barrel, and you get to try each one. So it's a live interactive experience rather than walking into a predetermined tasting. So yeah, I think it's going to be cool, man.
No, that sounds absolutely awesome, amazing. I can't wait till we get enough interest and get people down there doing this. So you know what? Let's start with you, and because this is the inaugural event right here, and
Sure.
You have been a bourbon aficionado enthusiast for longer than most of people that I know. What
Right.
got you into bourbon? How did you I mean, 10 years, 15 years ago, bourbon was the cheap brown liquor.
It absolutely was. And, I grew up in rural Illinois, Paris, Illinois. Weekends we were all hanging out in the woods and hanging out and drinking beer and occasional whiskey. But, those were the Seagram 7s and the VOs and the things that we could get our hands on as young consumers. But, for me, bourbon really fired up about 25 years ago. You could at the time find a Weller 107 red label for about $25, and people didn't know what it was. It was on the shelf, and it was a fantastic product. Of course, as you know now, if you're going to find one, you might get lucky and spend $100. If you have to find one on secondary, it might be 150, 160. But back in the early 90s, when bourbon really wasn't that hot, wine was big then. Craft beer hadn't kicked off yet. You could find a lot of really kick-ass bourbons on the shelf for under $35, $40. If you look back at Heaven Hill that you referenced, when I started drinking that, it was in a square bottle with a green label, and it was $19.99. Now, most stores, if you find the relabeled bottle, which is blue and white, gorgeous look, Heaven Hill 7, you're $55, $65. Secret for anybody in the Decatur area. They've got it on the shelf out at Sam's right now for $39.99. Everybody should have that on the shelf. But when you look at 1990 versus 2024, that price point has doubled. Their production has quadrupled, and they still can't keep up with the demand. So back in the 90s, bourbon was one of those things that the old guys drank. You sit around at the cabin and you drank a nice bourbon and smoked a cigar, and it was your nightcap after drinking beer all day and four-wheeling and hunting and doing their thing. I had an uncle that drank Old Granddad. I have a friend that his dad drank Blue Velvet all the time, and those were the premier bourbons, It's all changed, and look at us now. We're having 60, 70 people at a bourbon tasting, and we're able to share bourbon with good friends and family, and have bottle shares and be able to experience these products that have been made domestically for hundreds and hundreds of years with a different microscope, if you will.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people would agree with me and you on this. The hardest thing to pick out a good bourbon is knowing what you want to get. And when you walk down these aisles of these liquor stores, wherever you're at, whatever city, state you're in the U.S., they're just lined with, dozens and dozens and dozens, and 4 or 5 rows or shelves of different choices. And how are you knowing what to pick? Because are you picking the prettiest label? Are you picking a recommendation from a friend? Are you looking for price point? Like when I go down Famous Liquors here in Decatur or Mount Zion, I'm like, what do I pick?
Right. 400 options. Where do you go?
Yeah. And then you don't want to spend $75 or $65 or $100 on a bottle and it not be good. And everyone's taste is different. So what makes you select one over the other? Is it usually a recommendation from somebody, or
a little bit of both? I do watch some podcasts and get in a little more in depth on some things than maybe the average consumer does. But as I prepare for these bourbon tastings and presentations, there's a lot of research that goes in behind that. Fortunately for me, I have great liquor reps that come in and they keep me abreast on when Maker's Mark, for example, they've got several great solid product lines out. When there's a new wood finishing series or a new release this year, usually I get that information a couple months in advance so I can start doing my research and say, is this the same makers, or what makes this unique or special? What makes me want to spend that $70 for that bottle? Fortunately, I've got a lot of good friends, and I get to sample a lot of good bourbons, and they get to sample mine, and I have been able to disseminate, kind of a profile. I like, more of a barrel proof, somewhere in the 110 to 120 proof margin. Not to say that I don't enjoy a good 80 proof bourbon if the flavor's right. But if I'm going to sit around on a Friday night and enjoy some time with friends, I'm going to bring a couple of bottles along with me. And I kind of like a certain profile as far as proof, but I also like wheated bourbons, and rye has been kind of a new adventure for me. 5 years ago, it wasn't as prevalent to find a really good rye, and now Buffalo Trace has that kosher rye out. Hemingway has a killer rye that was just released that's got tons of awards behind it. So I guess in short, to me, it's doing a little bit of research. The internet's got so many different sites out there now that you can pop on Breaking Bourbon or pop on the distributor site, and they give you a little blurb about what the flavor profile is. Maybe you want to give it a shot, maybe you don't. But I like to also encourage people to go out to these tastings. It's not just at Decatur Club. Alec Johnson does them out at Famous on a Friday. There are other organizations in Champaign, Bloomington, Springfield area. Go out, explore those things. It's a very inexpensive option to spend $40 and come to a tasting like at Decatur Club and sample 5 or 6 bourbons. Find out what you like and what you don't. Out of the 6 Penelopes that we sampled the other night, it was kind of a 50-50 split. 2 or 3 of them weren't so popular. 2 or 3 of them, man, I just had to go find a bottle. Exposing yourself to a product line helps you narrow some of those things down when you're headed into the store.
Absolutely. So you have some like insider knowledge with your reps coming in. They say, hey,
Right.
This is our newest. This is selling the best right now, and this new build up here of this type of bourbon is really popular, and so you get to sample some. So I would call that some insider trading that you're actually
trading, but insider information. It helps me. Yeah, it helps me kind of to sort through those things. It's the same when I'm investing the club's money in inventory. What 5 bottles am I going to pull in for the next tasting? I want them to be well received. I want them to be products that my members and our guests are going to enjoy, not just at the tasting that night, but hopefully it draws you back in for one of our events like piano night or another event here at the club, and we'll have it on the rail behind us and being able to sell it by the pour. So
I think it's a great idea. It's good marketing for the club also,
yeah.
And these bourbon tastings allow people to sample different things. And I saw a lot of people putting half sipped cup off to the side. They didn't like that one so much, and the next one, like, oh my God, their eyes just lit up. So there's so much difference between one bourbon and another.
Absolutely.
And then basically it comes down to the what do you call it? The mash bill, is what you call it?
The mash bill. Yes, yeah. That's really where it is.
So in order to have a bourbon be called a bourbon, number one, I've heard that it has to be made in Kentucky. Is that correct?
Well, that's no longer correct. I mean, the general consensus is that most good bourbons come from Kentucky, and I'll call BS on that play. I've had some great bourbons in Traverse City, Michigan. I've had some great bourbons. I mean, Ben Holliday's out of Missouri, and they've got killer bourbons, soft red wheat. There are so many options out there. Even our Canadian friends have gotten into this with Caribou Crossing and some other options. So that one is kind of a dotted line through. A true bourbon in the mash bill, you've got to be 51% corn. You can sell a rye bourbon, but then that has to be the converse of that, 51% or more rye.
Okay,
a typical.
So that's basically the definition of the bourbon. It's got to be 51% or more of corn, correct?
Correct.
And then
the mash bill, or recipe, if you will, is basically the definition of mash bill. Your recipe going into the process has to be at least 51% corn. Many bourbons like a Weller and some of the others, Maker Mark, put in a percentage of wheat. So you might have 15% wheat. You might have 10 or 15% rye to give it a unique caraway flavor, and then you could have malted barley, which is fairly common not only in Scotch but also in bourbon. Malted barley is just the grain that has been allowed to take on water until it sprouts again, and then it's added back in. So whatever your recipe is, your percentages always have to be over 51% corn, and then split out based on the other ingredients. So there are a lot of great bourbons out there, like Weller and E.H. Taylor, and some of those that have higher content of wheat in their bourbons. And most of those houses also do a nice job of breaking those things down for you, either on the label or on their website.
Okay. So for our viewers at home that are listening to this and watching this, if it's typically a mixture of a couple different or three different ingredients. You got wheat, you got rye, you got toasted barley, and you got corn. For the viewers at home, if a bourbon is 80 or 90% or even 100% corn, would that be considered moonshine or what?
Well,
How
I
would you
don't know
define
about moonshine. I mean, people refer to that as corn liquor, and it's distilled at that, and it typically is bottled clear. Let me be clear about that. When you've made your mash bill and you've concocted this liquid now that's going to go in the barrel, it goes in clear. In the business, they call that white dog. If you go to Maker's Mark or Buffalo Trace or one of those, and you do a tour and you see them filling bottles, it comes out brown, obviously. That coloration comes from the wood sugars and the caramels and all the things that come out of the barrel. So direct answer, yes, it'd be 100% corn liquor, and it would probably be an extremely high alcohol content because it's not typically aged 4, 5, 7, 12 years like a bourbon is.
Okay, it's very new, very young.
Very new. It's raw. It looks like vodka, if you will, because it's a clear distillate. Then it goes into the barrel. 90% of the American barrels have been charred or burnt on the inside to a certain extent. The side of a barrel stave is about an inch or so thick. And when they burn that inner layer, it allows the bourbon to expand and contract in and out of the wood as it ages in the rickhouse. So when you burn the inside of that, it kind of creates these crevices, much like if you've had a campfire and you put it out, the next day you see that log that's kind of charred, lumpy, and it's got black and white cracks on it. That allows that bourbon to leach into the wood, and then when it contracts and pulls back out in the colder season, it draws those wood sugars, the oak flavors, the caramelization, the color that starts making it that dark through the aging process. So it goes in clear, comes out that way, no matter what your recipe is.
Very neat information here. So and there's so many people these days out there that are collecting bourbons. They have, a whole shipper robe cabinet or shelves in their kitchen or in their man cave, basement, or garage, and they can't wait to collect the next bourbon to add to their collection. And a lot of people I know, I do a lot myself, is if I see something I want, I'll usually buy two. I'll buy one so I can drink off it and I don't feel so bad. And I have one just kind of show and display. And then, once I'm done with that one bottle, then I got to go get another bottle, make sure that I don't keep dipping into that. Then there's these internet groups that are like so ripe with so many followers that people are trading. Hey, I'll trade you a Weller and a Weller and a Calumet. I'm looking for a and it's so popular. And then you're looking at their collection online. You're like, wow, that's amazing. So what do you think has caused the sudden rise and popularity and glamour of bourbon
and collecting?
Yeah, just
in regard to collecting, if you go back a few years, the craft beer industry took, we all grew up drinking Miller Lite, Bud Light, Natty Light, whatever your flavor was, Coors Light, Yingling, depending on where you were from. But the craft beer industry took on something that I had seen the wine industry do a couple of decades before. It used to have a very staunchy, crisp wine label. In the 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s, the wine industry really got on the marketing bandwagon and changed all the labels and really sexied up their product. And then when you're walking through that aisle, like you mentioned, your eye is drawn to this because of the label appeal. Your eye is drawn to that because of the color. It's just natural psychological instincts to be drawn to certain things. But the craft beer industry jumped on board as wine started to kind of cool out and craft beer took off. And they did all this really amazing theatrical labels. You look at New Belgium and Goose Island and some of them, really bright labeling, really drew your eye to their brand product. And then when they had you on their flagship, were able to go from there. Use Weller as an example. You used to be able to get it very cheap on the shelf. You could find a 12-year very cheap on the shelf. Now they've gone through, they've got their labeling. It looks different with the green and the red and the black and the blue and the orange and the white CYPB. So they've created an expansion, if you will, of their brand, and they draw you in. If you like one particular product, well, then surely I must like the 12-year too. I'll go out and seek that out.
Right, yeah.
When people are collecting and they look like you see behind us on the rail there, all the Old Foresters are in a row for that number series. At my house, all the Wellers are in a row, all the H. Taylors are in a row. People really want to collect a certain product line of brands that they enjoy. And I think that the marketing teams for each one of these have done a really nice job of differentiating each brand within a house. If you look at Buffalo Trace, for example, they're selling about a dozen different brands between vodkas and bourbons, and they have a different look for every particular product line.
Right.
If you look at Buffalo Trace alone, you've got the little 375s, you got the 750s, you got the leaders in restaurant business, you got the 175s. People want to capture one of every one of the bottle sizes too. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I think
where does it stop, though?
I know it doesn't stop. It's like you want to get more and more, and you get crazed with this.
Sure.
And I think one of the best companies are doing that is the Bartons with the horses. Absolutely. And the B and the A and the R, yeah. T-O-N, and the apostrophe S, it's amazing. So you want to get the whole collection of the Bartons, and just because it's
Blanton's.
Yeah. I mean, when I grew up, I don't know if you were when I grew up in high school, I was just barely drinking beer at that time. No, I actually started collecting beer cans in like 7th and 8th grade. There was a beer can collection craze when I was like 7th and 8th and freshman year, where you just couldn't wait to get that certain can. They were empty, of course. But it was, and the harder ones were more sought after, and it just made you go get them more. You go to auctions. I would go to flea markets. I go to trading events, and I was just collecting it just for the uniqueness of it. I wasn't drinking any of it in 7th and 8th grade, but I had a huge beer can collection, and it almost identified me of who I was, because I was competing with so many of my friends in my neighborhood and around my city. And I'm like, damn, look at my collection. And that's almost like what bourbon is doing these days.
Absolutely.
Bartons, wow. I mean, it's amazing, Yeah.
Well, and speaking of Blanton's, the minis, my first exposure to Blanton's was in 1990. I went to my first National Restaurant Association show in Chicago, and they had an International Spirits and Wines piece for that. And they were giving away little mini 50 ml Blanton's airline bottles. They had the little mini horse, but this was before they put the letter on each one of them. They just had the same little jockey look. And they were giving these away because no one had ever heard of Blanton's. It was Buffalo Trace's first single barrel product that they released that was, and still is, hand bottled, hand waxed, hand sealed. If you've ever been down there, it's a really cool experience if they're bottling Blanton's on the day that you're at the distillery. And at the time, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I guess now, that was the first exposure to the market. No one had heard about this in the United States. Now, it was being shipped to Japan and other countries who have been, in my opinion, a little bit ahead of this bourbon surge, because if you go out and look, there are a lot of releases out there, not just Weller and Blanton's and Buffalo Trace products, but there are a lot of one-off releases that simply go to our Asian friends in that market. Some of them make it back. There's a Blanton's Red Takara box that is shipped and produced only for Japan. Sometimes those make it back with friends who travel or friends who are in the military, or they find them, at an airport kiosk, and it's a one-off, so people collect them. But to me, collecting is in your blood. You're either a collector or not, whether it's a line ice stuff or NBA stuff or bourbon or cars or guns or diamonds. Everybody's got a different thing that they like to collect. But to me, bourbon is really all about sharing great products with friends and family. Sometimes that gets to be a bit of a contest, because you and I are both looking for that last orange label Weller to finish our flight of 6. Sometimes it's bragging rights. Hey, man, we've both been looking this for a long time. Guess what I got? Happy birthday. Let's sit and enjoy it. I looked all summer for another E.H. Taylor single barrel, and praise Jesus, I found it on my birthday coming home from my folks' house in Paris. Cost me $99, but I was drinking EHT single barrel on my birthday. So, sometimes it's about the hunt too, and just being able to go out and find and see what is out there. These certain products are released once a month in certain markets, and sometimes once a year in other markets. So, there are bourbons that people seek out, that can be challenging to find, and it's kind of rewarding sometimes to be able to have something cool like that to celebrate an occasion.
Oh, absolutely. And I stand corrected. I think I was saying Barton's, not Blanton's. So
yeah, Blanton's. Well, Barton's also made by them. They make a product called Very Old Barton, and it's a short, squatty bottle like the old Weller style bottle. And that, if you can find, friends, is fantastic booze for under $25. It is the same exact mash bill that is used as Pappy 10. However, it is about $20 instead of $200 or $300.
Oh yeah. Let's talk about Pappy's. I think Pappy's recently has been one of the most sought after collectible bourbons, because of the story behind it and the rarity of it and the difficulty in getting it, and of course the price that it comes with. I mean, $700 to $1,000 for a 10-year. I mean, this is
10-year, and that should be, if you could get it shipped to your liquor store, it should come in about $100.
Right.
In the old days they were $109, but if you found one under $300 now, you ought to be feeling like a king. Secondary, you're right, on a 10-year, somewhere between 700 and 900. 12-year. Again, that should be a $299 bottle if you were able to get it at Famous or someplace through a raffle. You're $800 to $1,000. It's crazy what people will give to find that last bottle that they're seeking, or one that they want for a special life occasion. It's a rarity, and sometimes you want to mark those things in with something that's unattainable by other people. Last year, I did a wedding for a good buddy of mine, and he was looking for a bottle. His last name starts with B. He was looking for a bottle of Blanton's that had the letter B, and he wanted to share that with all his groomsmen, and they had a nice toast. We were able to get one in for him. We shared that between 8 groomsmen, and it marked the occasion, and they all signed his bottle. And
nice.
It's one of those once in a lifetime moments that you're able to share, and you're able to embellish with friends and enjoy a nice bourbon.
That is a great story.
It's cool.
And like the whole deal with Pappy's is, the theory is the more expensive it is, the better it's going to taste, the more exquisite and unique. And I've been lucky enough to have gotten over the years a couple of bottles of one bottle of 10, one bottle of 15, and I kept them for a little while. And I says, I'm not going to be a museum. This is before I really got into collecting bourbon and really getting into it. I'm doing my Thursday night bourbon that we do out in Shelbyville, Finley. And so I had it for a while. And my buddy's birthday, we took him to the old R's Bar and Grill. God bless Randy. Randy
Yes.
West, rest in peace,
It's a
buddy.
great place.
Oh, great place, great guy, Randy's. So I took him to, we went there dinner, and then we brought him back to my pawn store. He'd never been into a pawn store before, so I brought him in there, and I gave him the 10-cent nickel tour, or whatever you want to call it. And we got him up my office, and he says, "What is that?" I'm like, "Oh, that's Pappy's." I'm like, "You know what? What the hell? Let's break into it, right?" So we broke into it, and we had 3 or 4 little shots. It was really nice, and it was really good. And then over the next couple months, I kept drinking it with very select friends. You want to be very careful on that. And then a buddy of mine, Bill Niemerg, who owns Niemerg's Family Winery in Philly, he was lucky to come across one, and he was going to share it with a couple of us. I'm like, "Hey, before you do this, what I want to do is I want to do a side-by-side blind taste test with another one of your high-end bourbons." So he went and he poured 2 glasses, and one with an Eagle Rare and one with the Pappy's. And I really did. I really swirled it. I really swirled it around. I opened it up a little bit. I did my nose test. I did my taste test on both of them. And I did this 3 or 4 times. And I'm like, that's the Pappy's right there, because it's got to be the best tasting one there is between the two. Nope. I picked Eagle Rare. Now, Pappy's is wheated where Eagle Rare's is not. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So that might have been the difference in the.
We weren't doing Eagle Rare is still a 10-year, and it's a fantastic bourbon. I think it's one everybody should have on their shelf. There are some people out there that throw shade on it because it's a lesser priced bourbon, but you should be able to find that $50, $65 a bottle, somewhere in there. That's another one that used to be $29.99 on the shelf all day. And where I like the Eagle Rare is some of the store picks and the single barrels. I've stumbled upon some in various different liquor stores and establishments over the years, and by those I mean the little bottles that maybe have a gold or a silver medallion that say Perry's Liquor or Famous Liquor. Places like that go out and buy an entire barrel, and they have specialists walk through the distillery with them and help them disseminate what's going to be the best barrel for them to pick. And then they buy the barrel, they have it bottled, it gets shipped down to Famous Liquor or whoever bought it, and that's their signature or store pick for a period of time. You're going to get a different bottle of Eagle Rare buying that than you do a mass production run, because an Eagle Rare store pick is a barrel that maybe produced 220-ish bottles out of the one barrel. If they do a production run of Eagle Rare today, they might dump 10 barrels and run that production, and it's going to be something different, than what you're going to get in the store pick.
Are you talking about dumping 10 barrels into one mixture?
Well, into one, that's what a true small batch is. I mean, if you're
Okay.
going to have if you're going to go out and do E.H. Taylor small batch, they're going to go out and round up X amount of barrels, dump them into the hopper at the same time, run a bottle run out of that, and that's your small batch release.
There you go.
Sometimes you get a Larceny, for example. They do an A release, a B release, and a C. So 3 times a year, they're releasing different bourbons at different proofs.
Right.
Eagle Rare is always going to be released at the same proof. So if the barrel's run a little hot, they're going to add distilled water to that to get it to the exact, proof level that they're advertising on the bottle.
Oh, fantastic. Great information, man. This has been a great little conversation between us. I mean, it's casual, it's off the cuff. None of it's, rehearsed or anything like that.
No script.
No script. I think it just, feeding off each other. I think it'd be a good idea to keep these about 30 minutes apiece. So people don't get bored. I know we're all busy right now. So we're at about 33 minutes into this one right now. I think the first one was
Let's wrap it up, brother. I appreciate it. Happy Friday to you all. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend and you find a bourbon that you want to share with your friends and make some memories.
Absolutely. And you too. And everybody who's at home watching and listening to this, please like and share this with your friends, because we just want to expand this to the outside the Decatur market. We want to get more people involved. I said initially our goal is to get a big following where we are able to have the Decatur Club invest in a store pick barrel, get it bottled with our labels on it, and sell it through the Decatur market, and raise money for charity here in the Macon County. I think it's a great concept for all of us. It's a win-win for everybody. Win-win for the Decatur Club, for the customers who are watching this, for the charity, and the bourbon lovers and enthusiasts. So please like and share and comment. Give us some criticism and some
let us know. Hey, if there's something you want to hear about, send us a question. We're happy to address whatever we can.
Yeah,
absolutely. If we don't know, we'll research it and make sure you get the answer next time around.
And I will see you at the next Decatur Club bourbon tasting.
Third Friday. Come see us. RD1 this month. Third Friday, I believe, is the 19th of September.
Yep.
We do bourbon tastings every third Friday of the month. And last month was Penelope. This month will be RD1. I have the High Note lineup as well in October. So, yeah, check us out, or check us out on Facebook, either one.
All right. Sounds good. Jeff, thank you. Have a great Friday.
Weekend.
Everybody, bye-bye.
See you, my man.